Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are all doing well, and today, my friends, we're back with a Dwarf versus Dark Elf grudge match. The actual grudge match, because, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who's really a lore aficionado, didn't the Dark Elves start the whole War of Vengeance thing and kind of frame the High Elves and all that sort of good stuff? Well, anyways, discussion for another day. As far as my army goes, we do have blasting charges in the front line, quite good against the Dark Elves. They do have a lot of lightly armored infantry, Sisters of Slaughter, Witch Elves, Bleak Swords, Dread Spears. Obviously, there are some heavily armored infantry units via the Hargoneth Executioners, but even still, the blasting charges do quite a bit of disruption, and the miners themselves do also have good armor-piercing value. So yeah, they'll get massacred by Hargoneth Executioners, but if you're like flanking with them, or if you have to throw something against them, it's not the worst case scenario. So aside from that, we got two basic Longbeards. We got two Longbeards with great weapons on the flanks, double Iron Drake Trollhammer Torpedo, as well as two Slayers in the backfield, and triple Rangers. So the Rangers are there to kind of keep my opponents ranged honest. I'm hoping that they can outrange the Dark Shards and hopefully trade pretty effectively in that situation. So the basic formula is we have two Iron Drakes to shoot chariots and lords and things like that. We have triple Rangers to shoot down the range pieces, and that's pretty much it as far as the army goes. Now, another really spicy element here of the force is the double Master Engineer, because obviously Dark Elves can shut down your Iron Drakes, they can shut down your Rangers, but I've kind of found that having a Master Engineer in a lot of matchups, it's like this consistent armor-piercing shot, and also the Fiery Ring of Thori can be very, very powerful indeed. Now, for the armies of the Great Hadries, or the Army, he does have Dark Riders, a couple of Harpies in the distance, one over here and one up in the hills, and his main battle line is going to be triple Hargoneth Executioner, triple Dark Shard, I believe, and Malekith on his Velociraptor limo, which is quite awesome for sure, and double Cold One Chariot. Cold One Chariots, of course, have been pretty common against dwarves for a long time. They have armor-piercing missiles on top, and they also, of course, are armor-piercing chariots, which are very good against dwarves. Chariots have been the scourge of the Dowie for a long time. So Hadries right now repositioning his army a little bit, looking at where he wants to perhaps take this engagement. And my Ranger's going to be shooting in. I kind of thought, I was like, okay, do I focus on the Dark Shards or do I go after the Hargoneth Executioners? And at the end of the day, I felt like the armor-piercing infantry were a little bit more devastating, so I do blast these guys pretty damn hard. They get hit with the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, they get hit with blasting charges, and also the Rangers are triple firing onto them. So far, so good. This is certainly a good start. However, Hadries, very quick to respond, does land his Harpies here in the backfield, and I send in Longbeards to kind of deal with them in just a moment. So those Longbeards will be rushing in to hopefully be able to kind of cut those Harpies apart. Trollhammer Torpedoes don't want to be shooting Bleak Swords. Unfortunately, the elite infantry will be getting through here, and now the Chariots have kind of screamed into my lines. One of them did get blasted pretty good. The Trollhammers here on the other side of the formation were able to rip a single volley, kill a Cold One Chariot, and basically nullify the entire squad. So now we're switching on here. The single Trollhammer Torpedo has already pretty much paid for itself. The other one did kind of get run over there, and a Fiery Ring of Thori going down in the front line. It doesn't really do too much against Hargoneth Executioners, but I did kind of do it in a panic of a micro situation. I was like, oh, I gotta hurry. Now, we are ahead on the Bounce of Power, actually very early here in this game. We broke off some infantry. The Hargoneth Executioners are still taking a lot of damage, despite fighting, a minor unit. The Focus Fire and the Blasting Charges were able to do some substantial work. Everything's going, pretty well, more or less. But now Malekith is going to be coming in with the big Soul Stealer. That's going to be a juicy one. And even though the Dwarves do have magic resist, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use magic against them. That was something like in the very early days of Warhammer 1. I remember people saying like, oh, it's the Dwarves, you don't need to bring a caster, let's go something else. It's like, no, you do. The caster is very, very important against the Dowie. They don't have, any way to really, counter heal it or things like that. The damage you do, and pendulums, still do a ton of damage, even if you take 20% or 25% off for the Dwarven magic resist. Nice chariot play here. The Cold One Chariot moving through the Rangers and trying to dodge the Trollhammer Torpedo shots. But it looks like the torpedoes are hitting home to an extent. Here comes another volley. Come on, get him! Fire, reload, fire! 999 HP on this bad boy. Hargoneth Executioners are chasing down my poor Iron Drakes, but the Longbeards should be able to rush in on the flanks here with their great weapons. And just with strength of numbers, hopefully can cut through these Hargoneth Executioners and really, make them pay for their transgressions. All that sort of good stuff. That's what dwarves live for. My Rune Lord is my Lord. Forgot to mention that earlier. He does have the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. That's pretty much it. Normally I go with Gromby here, but I wanted to get a wider force, and by going with the Rune Lord, I was able to get like an extra 600 gold, which did allow me to get a couple more infantry units, which was actually quite helpful here in this game. Though we have kind of fallen behind on the Bounce of Power, the lead we were able to get early by nuking the Chariots down, by having the Rangers really blasting into a multitude of targets, has kind of diminished. And man, Hadries has been so on point here with the Soul Stealers. Another one goes down here, hits the Iron Drakes, hits the Master Engineer, hits the Rangers here, and I believe, yeah, it hits these Rangers too. Nasty, nasty stuff. Hadries is dropping so much damage to my force. And now Malekith getting in there on his Velociraptor limo, going to be riding in, going straight Jurassic Park all over my units. A little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. And as far as the army of the Dark Elves go, I did send some Slayers back there to try and deal with the missile line, but really nice crossfire there by Hadri's was able to cause some disruption. And here's the angriest Slayer in all of Warhammer. Fiery Ring of Thori going down, and oh man, that's a little bit of a shame. A little bit anticlimactic, to be honest, but you know, he tried his best. So back here, Rune Lord holding his own, trying to hold back the Hargoneth Executioners while my Rangers do get back online. Now they're going to be able to start ripping some shots, and it's, despite the bounce power being pretty bad for me, it still feels like a pretty close game. I have the double Master Engineers. I knew I had a couple Fiery Rings of Thori in the back pocket, and hopefully the Rune Lord will be able to break the momentum here of the Hargoneth Executioners. So you'll notice that I move in, I attack it. That actually breaks their attack order, so then they have to get another attack order. So if someone isn't paying attention, for example, they're just going to kind of stand here, reform ranks, and get blasted. So that's a pretty good tactic to use if you guys haven't tried it before. So here comes Malekith moving in, going after the Master Engineer. He's very kindly escorting this this elderly engineer here into the forest, and yeah, that's not great. Granted, getting the Malekith here into the bushes is a good situation for me. Chariots are exponentially less effective when fighting in the trees, so that's certainly going to be quite nice. And now the Hargoneth Executioners moving in. Rangers are on the run. They're pumping them Dwarven legs. They got 33 speed. Hargoneth Executioners do have 31. It's probably one of the only times in the history of Elves versus Dwarves that the Dwarves are actually faster. And poor Master Engineer is taking a beating, but another cool part about Master Engineers is they do have good armor-piercing hammers. They hit very hard in melee. Not very hard, but they hit very hard in terms of armor-piercing. So these attacks actually can do some work against Malekith. So we do get the Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin here. The Master Engineers are dropping some bows. Unfortunately, the melee defense of Malekith, despite being only 27, is holding up against my melee attack, and I haven't been able to hit Malekith, I think, once in this whole engagement. There's once, but that was from the Rune Lord, who has, like, terrible combat prowess. Up on the trees, we do also have the Iron Drakes, 2 Iron Drakes shooting in here, and, you know, those little torpedoes can actually do some work, so that whole kind of jump there on Malekith only did about 600 or 700 damage. Oh, and check this out, guys. I remember this point from the game. So the Master Engineers line up their long rifles, they take a 1-2 pot shot, and check this out, and one Lizard Limo just gets dunked offline by the Master Engineers. Down it goes, and now they're going to get in, which is unfortunate, so I will be taking some damage. Most likely, yeah, it looks like I kind of took a little bit of peripheral damage, but for the most part, my character squad should be able to dismantle this chariot. And also my Rangers back here, able to finish off the Hargoneth Executioner. So now, guys, it smells like a Dowie comeback. Don't call it a comeback. The Dwarves have been here for about 6 minutes, give or take. And here comes Master Engineers. Fiery Rings of Thori in pocket. And this is one of the reasons why I think they're quite good in this matchup. I wasn't the most effective with them in the early game, and kind of the whole panic, but here it comes. Brutal, brutal damage. Talk about Scab Scraith, man oh man. I mean, the Dwarves basically do have Scab Scraith, which I think you're going to... I really do feel like you're going to start seeing a lot more of Master Engineers. They have really good sniping potential, which is a huge part of Total War Warhammer multiplayer. And here comes another Fiery Ring going through these guys. Look at the damage, and look at the bounce of power creep back as that Fiery Ring absolutely destroys the light armor. And that really is kind of the name of the game. The Fiery Ring is exceptional against lightly armored units. And now you can see Malekith moving in, going after the Master Engineers on his Velociraptor mount here. The Rune Lord should be able to jump in there and get some work in. The hammer time is coming as well. And honestly, if we can connect a couple attacks here on Malekith, I think we might be in good shape. And you can run, but the Master Engineers are going to be forced to kind of juke a little bit. I do turn around to actually try and snipe Malekith, but this was probably the best play of the game from Hadri's, and it's a very subtle one. He takes a couple shots, but then he runs into the trees, and Malekith suddenly becomes hidden. I can't see him anymore. You'll see it in just a second. As a matter of fact, in the game, I believe it was like this moment, I couldn't see Malekith. He disappeared into the tree line. The Fog of War was now covering him, so I was like, oh man, Malekith would have died there. Most likely, if I could have gotten a couple more shots, he would have broken. So now we're kind of forced to go in there in melee and just fight fisticuffs. I'm juking the shots with the Master Engineer. My Rangers over here doing the work of Grungni for sure. They fended off Harpies and Bleak Swords and a bunch of units, and they were able to stabilize, which is very, very important. So here comes the Dwarven squad, the Rune Lord, as well as the Master Engineers rushing in to intercept Malekith, dropping some hammers. I do miss all my attacks again, which is pretty unfortunate. And now it's looking like Malekith was holding his Soul Stealer in the back pocket, which is probably going to finish off the Master Engineer. Rune Lord breaks. GG, well played. What a close game. Super, super close. I thought I was in trouble early on, but the Fiery Rings of Thori and the Master Engineer sniping proved to be pretty damn powerful that game. So, looking at the value here, Trollhammers kind of got shut down. No surprise. Hadri's really focused some. Rangers did okay. I felt like the whole plan I had just kind of went to scraps when the Hargoneth Executioner started to get in and just accrue big value against me. 1200, and 1000 there. Pretty scary stuff, but yeah, 1300, 1000 here. Some of the Longbeards did okay, but for the most part, it really was on the back of my characters. But yeah, very well played game. Very well played game to Hadri's. It was super fun. Certainly haven't played that matchup in ages, But yeah, it was cool. You know, we were practicing under the pretenses of using like picks and bans. So I think I picked Dwarves banning Skaven and High Elves, and his pick was Dark Elves. And yeah, I honestly feel like it's an even matchup. I feel like if it's a really big map, the Dwarves have an advantage because they can go like triple cannon and really just pound the Dark Elves on the advance. But on a smaller map, I feel like it's a very even matchup. Anyways, guys, that is it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed this Dwarven versus Dark Elf grudge match. Another grudge for the book. It's great. So the Rune Lord has grudged. Grombrindle will, receive notice of the grudge, and he'll come and hopefully be able to deal with Malekith. And they have a little bit of a tiff between them anyways. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. We'll see you on the other side, and you guys take care.